Good evening. In football, it's the case of Back to the Future. Earlier today, at an extraordinary meeting of the Football League in Birmingham, and that's worrying the Sports Council, with 104 organisations claiming to represent karate alone, it's an anarchic free-for-all in which it's hard to tell the Eastern warrior from the Western cowboy.
In Britain, 250,000 people practice the martial arts. It's one of the fastest growing sectors in our leisure industry. For the customer, the appeal is obvious. A blend of mental and physical power, of oriental mystique and Western machismo. The problem is one of choice. When there are so many disciplines and so many listed organisations representing them, finding an authentic outlet is, as the Sports Council acknowledges, largely a matter of luck.
For some time, the Council's been worried about three aspects of martial arts. The first has been the poor organisation of the martial arts in general. Secondly is the multiplicity of organisations which have sprung up in the martial arts in each of the disciplines. And thirdly, I don't think there's been enough good advice available to the young people who want to participate in the sport.
In the Far East, karate is called empty hand. Over here, with the increased popularity of karate and many other martial arts, there's more than a fistful of dollars to be made. And where there's money, there's exploitation. To protect the public, the Sports Council wants each martial art to have its own governing body. At the moment, there's only an umbrella organisation, which has many problems and many critics.
There is a governing body for martial arts in this country, called the Martial Arts Commission. And in theory, this is set up, I think, to safeguard the public against abuse by cowboy instructors. But in practice, it's powerless. And unfortunately, I've seen more cowboy instructors than I've seen legitimate ones.
Dr. Guy McClure is not a cowboy, but he was taken in by an Eastern promise of impressive qualifications. After 5 years of studying Jujitsu, McClure was an accomplished martial artist, a testimony to his commitment in both time and money. His certificates were signed by the grandmaster Hayabuchi, but when he visited Japan to meet his mentor, he was sadly disappointed.
Grandmaster Hayabuchi was completely dumbfounded to see this certificate, which has obviously been made with some care. He was astonished to see his own signature and his name written in English on it, and really just didn't know what to say to me. It was only because he's a gentleman and was very well behaved that he didn't throw me out of the house. In fact, he obviously realised that I'd been taken in just as much as he had, and that I was acting in good faith when I came to visit him.
The Nippon Dai Budo Kai certificates were issued not in the Far East, but east of Liverpool. The operation in this country was set up by Robert Clarke. Until recently, he held an influential position in the Martial Arts Commission.
There is nothing simple in the situation with certificates in the martial arts. Indeed, I know this is a fact, but I'm not going to mention where it is, but there is a dojo where people, for quite a long time, were coming in and bowing to this large ornate certificate, and it turned on the wall, showing it great respect and veneration, and it turned out to be a Japanese laundry bell.
The martial arts may not be simple, but some instructors seem to rely heavily on the simplicity or rather gullibility of the general public. Take this advertisement for Spirit Combat. Such strident appeals are the trademark of Kancho professor Brian Dossett, the self-styled thinking man's martial artist. Ex-bouncer, part-time kickboxer and practising hypnotherapist, Dossett is the founder member of the Spirit Combat discipline. Today it's a worldwide operation, and Dossett coordinates affairs from his semi-detached home in Woking.
Spirit Combat is a word put together with a philosophy. We all have a spirit, and that spirit is at combat with itself all the time, no matter where we may be, even if we're asleep. Our mind and our body is working and working and working. The shapes of our body when we're in bed proves that. So spirit combat is a style catering for the Western mind so the people can enjoy it without having all the hassle of worrying about learning Japanese, Chinese, Indian, or whatever the case may be. I'm British, and I teach my people the British way.
Dossett's British way also involves a seemingly miraculous one-day course, which can turn absolute beginners into fully qualified instructors.
They apply and they come to on one of the courses. In one day, yes, they can become an instructor. They come to me and I show them the first form. And I say, well, that's easy. Now you can go away and teach that.
Yesterday I'd never practiced a martial art before. Today I'm a Shodan Ho, licensed to teach with a certificate to prove it. For a fee of just £35, I progressed from a complete beginner to a black belt and became a fully qualified spirit combat instructor within just one day. If that's not enough to convince the public, maybe a few Bruce Lee-style tactics just might. Some of Kancho Dossett's pupils are following in his footsteps and teaching others. But when instructors have qualified the Kancho way, just how competent are they? To get a professional viewpoint, we asked Alan Parry to go to a regional spirit combat club. A black belt 4th dan in karate and a former member of the British karate squad, Parry now instructs Royal Marine Commandos. He was not impressed with the spirit combat style of self-defence.
I got the impression that it was a mixture of Jujitsu and bits and bobs thrown in. The class I found very awkward, and the techniques that were getting taught I didn't think were founded techniques. What I found was a hobshot of all techniques just thrown in, and to be honest I thought it was completely and utterly rubbish. Well, some of the techniques I was taught, the first one to begin with was grabbing my wrist from behind, holding my wrist and actually telling me to move backwards and grab their wrist with my other wrist, which was a really funny position, which was hurting myself. I was going to give in on that. And then actually take them down to the floor with a throw. In reality, what would happen, if the man did grab me from behind, I couldn't move my arms because he's too strong. What should happen, if a man does grab me from behind, the only chance you really got is to butt the head back into the face, slam onto the legs, into the groin.
I think it's totally irresponsible for anyone to think that they can become an instructor, and totally irresponsible for anyone to try and let people think or tell them they could qualify for an instructor in one day.
The Martial Arts Commission has let it be known that it is unhappy with Dossett's technical competence and responsibility. It's surprising then that he should be involved in the Sports Council's talks to clean up the martial arts. It's even harder to understand the involvement of this man. Joe Ellis was banned from teaching by his karate organisation and struck off the Martial Arts Commission register following complaints about unsuitable training practices for young children. They came from Eileen Treadwell, chairwoman of the local Sports Council.
Joe was very full of the fact that his club was doing extremely well, but teaching and had some children as young as 3 years old. That to me seemed far too young. I telephoned the local consultant from the William Harvey Hospital the next morning. I went to his home, spoke to him at his home, and he asked me to stop the 3-year-olds from training and the very young children being trained as soon as I possibly could.
It wasn't only Ellis's teaching methods Mrs. Treadwell objected to, it was his history of violent behaviour.
I committed an offence about 3 to 3.5 years ago that the Martial Arts Commission, or the governing bodies, considered not a worthy offence to commit at my status of the game. And that offence, I will quite publicly make known that I was committed for an offence that involves violence.
It's against the whole ethos of the martial arts, because you're supposed to be able to control your temper. Control is one of the important things. And I think, in general, without going into any specifics, that anyone who had convictions for violence within the martial arts, I would think should not be teaching.
The ban had little impact. Although he could no longer teach on local authority premises, Ellis continued to hire church halls to give lessons. He's still teaching today. Joe Ellis may have been struck off the Martial Arts Commission register, but his views, like those of Kancho Dossett, are still being canvassed by the Sports Council. In its search for unified governing bodies, apparently anything goes.
I think what is important is that in these discussions we have an inclusive range of people to talk to, rather than excluding those who, for whatever reason, have been involved with difficulties in the past.
I think that there is more concern with the political side of things than there is with the everyday running of clubs. And as far as I'm concerned, what matters to me more than anything else is little Johnny who comes through the door. And I fear that some of the committee members, the leaders of these organisations, don't even know that little Johnny exists.
My fear is that there are a lot of children who will be damaged and injured. They could be damaged for the rest of their lives. We're not aware of exactly what is happening, and I think parents must be warned about it.